Started. Hello, it's Charmaine Hammond, and I'm here with Victoria Bennett tonight for crowdfunding for authors. Victoria and I are so excited about this because, Victoria, we've been talking about this for a couple of years now, that we've got to do a webinar on crowdfunding. And here we are on a super hot night. For all of you that are joining us live, we've got the Q&A function. So Victoria and I will be able to see the questions that you are typing in, and we will have some time at the end for questions. A lot of times with this particular topic, and I know authors are great at asking questions, so if we need to stay on a little bit past the top of the hour, Victoria and I are happy to do that. For those of you that are listening later to the replay, I'm so glad you joined us, and we look forward to seeing your questions. You can email us or message us in social media. So anything to add, Victoria, before I do an introduction of you and we get started?
No, just for anybody who arrived late, all we're asking is if you can put into the Q&A who you are, where you're from, and what you hope to get out of today's session, just to make sure we can cover everything you want. And if you've already released a book, what's the title? What's it all about?
Wonderful, thank you. Well, let's dive in, Victoria. We're going to introduce each other. So I think, Victoria, you're introducing me, and then I'm going to take it away and introduce you.
Yeah. So Charmaine is an 11 times best-selling author. 5 of her own books featured in 11 others, and 2 more ready for release. She is a certified professional speaker and expert in collaboration, funding dreams and bringing projects to life. Her company, Raise a Dream, has helped many clients implement her strategies to make their book a business. Over the years, she has raised millions of dollars for projects she has been involved with, for charities that she supports, for her own projects, and in collaboration with her clients. She has sold thousands of books through collaborative campaigns, sponsorship, and bulk buys.
Woo, thank you.
It's always easier if somebody else does it for you rather than using your own.
Isn't that the truth? And Victoria, I've known Victoria for a few years now. She hails from the UK. In fact, just got back from there. She's lived in Canada now for 18 years. One of the things that really surprised me getting to know Victoria over the years as a marketer is that she's actually studied biochemistry. I did not know that when I met Victoria, and she studied biochemistry at university. She's a crowdfunding and marketing expert. And I'm just going to add a personal note here. I've worked with Victoria on many projects, and her creativity and innovation just continues to amaze me. I'm so delighted to have you in my life. And biochemistry?
Yep. You want a quick Krebs cycle? I can do that.
Wonderful. Oh, and she's worked on so many brands such as Tide, Pampers, NMAX. And then prior to setting up her own company about 9 years ago now, providing strategic marketing services and support and coaching, running crowdfunding campaigns. And Victoria, it always amazes me when you talk about the amounts that you have raised through crowdfunding campaigns on behalf of your clients. And you've been involved in over 100 campaigns that have raised over $20 million. Woo!
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. And you know, when we talked today about sort of, you know, raising money for your book, you know, that this really works from a few thousand up to significant amounts of money. So
yeah. And that, yeah. I really love that you present that early on, because that's one of the questions I get all the time from authors and Raise a Dream. How much should I be planning on raising? And one of the things you and I have talked about is sometimes authors, content creators, screenwriters, aspiring authors, sometimes they set their vision a little low. So tonight, I think you'll be hearing us talk about the importance of raising those big dreams. So Victoria and I have known each other for 5 years now. We've worked together on a variety of different projects. We've supported each other's clients, and we have also become good friends. And that's been the real benefit out of all of this. So one thing that would be interesting to hear is how you got into crowdfunding. I think that's an important story, because you've come to crowdfunding with this incredible background with marketing for really big brands. And now you're a leader in crowdfunding, you know, owner of the Crowdfunding Hub. How did you get into all of this?
Well, it was a bit of a strange one. About 10 years ago, I was on the board of the Calgary Boys Choir, and I was asked to run a crowd fund for their 40th birthday concerts. And I'm like, what is a crowd fund? I had no idea what they were asking me to do. So I did a bit of investigation. I set up a campaign, and we were actually successful to raise enough money to make every concert for their 40th anniversary free and open up access to the whole community. So, it was a really cool thing to do. And what we did was we took donations at the door, and that money actually went to make a bursary to fund future boys to join the choir. So it was just a win-win all the way around. So
Wow.
I had no idea really what a crowdfunding campaign was, and I was just blown away by the impact you could have. And we were able to get small amounts of cash from a large crowd of people. And actually, in this case, we were able to get the cash from globally. We had people backing the campaign, not just from Calgary. We had it from very wide audience, people who were passionate about it, boys who are alumni, who are actually grown men. So we were able to find our crowd, and as I say, able to fund all the concerts.
Yeah. Wow.
But I sort of investigated further, because I was like, this is cool, and just saw how it's a really effective way to leverage your community to achieve your goals. And so that's when I sort of really got into it. And I was going to say, I've been actively doing this as a business for 9 years now, which in the crowdfunding world is a very long time.
Well, and what's so interesting, you'll all hear us talk a little bit about that tonight. There's a lot of common mistakes that authors, entrepreneurs, speakers, coaches, nonprofits make around crowd funds. And I know that we'll be able to sort of dispel some myths as we go through our content, but also help really give you some of that important information that you need to have before you look at crowdfunding as an option.
Perfect. But I think let's start on the other side to it, Charmaine. And why is it important to properly fund a book?
Well, love that question. So having been published since 2010, I was amazed when my publisher said, "Did you know that the average author sells less than 500 books?" And as we dove into the research, it's about 250 books that the average author sells, which is nowhere near enough money to cover all of the costs that you have: design, production, release, PR, media, printing, all of that, regardless of whether you publish traditionally or self-publish. There's a lot of costs in the book. So what I think about is that authors need to have the funding for their book to launch the book and produce the book the right way. If your book does not look high quality, libraries and bookstores are not going to bring it in. And it's even harder and harder now to get your books into libraries and bookstores. It's tougher to get media. So the better production you have on your book, the better the release and launch, the more chance you're going to get media. And the other piece that I think is often missed by authors is that there's so much energy and time that goes into writing the book. I get it. I've written many books and contributed to many collaborative books, and it takes time and energy, and a lot of our soul and a lot of our heart goes into it. And then sometimes at the end of all of this, Victoria, people are exhausted. Like, it's like, oh, what? Now I've got to launch the book. So it's this resurgence of energy and passion that has to come from. And then what happens is a lot of times authors will rush the process, and then they don't tap into what you identified a while ago as being one of the most critical aspects of crowdfunding, which is the community and other people's audiences. And that's why crowdfunding can be a great option for authors. A couple of other things that I'll mention in response to your question, Victoria, is that some authors are covering all of the expenses themselves for the book, and it can get very costly. So crowdfunding gives an opportunity to be able to fund the different elements of your book. And when authors are funding it themselves, sometimes they will, I'll give you an example. One author that I knew years ago who was self-publishing was running out of money to get the book off the ground, and she had some tight timeline. She was going on a tour and wanted to be able to have her book, and she really didn't do the best. She didn't hire an editor. So she edited her own book, which is not a great thing to do. She had a typo on her cover. After she printed about, 1,000, she realized she had a typo on her cover, and the colors that she chose did not look great in pictures. Bookstores and libraries did not like the book. She chose a very unusual size. It didn't fit on any shelves. So there was a lot of work that was missed out. And so this is why I say we've got to have that right funding. And then the part that I love, and you know this about me, Victoria, is that there's so many opportunities when you fund your book appropriately, bring in sponsors, bring in partners, champions, and community. It is mind-blowing what you can do with your book and how many people will be impacted by your very important message. So these are some of the reasons that we write books to be an evergreen book a lot of the times. On Toby's Terms came out in 2010 and it's in its second edition and it continues to sell. And part of that is because we've created it into be an evergreen book by having the right supports in place. So I hope that answers the question, Victoria.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. And I was going to say, you know, people write books to be read and to make an impact. So, you know, as you say, getting that broader reach, that broader audience, you know, that's a success. I did go through everybody's comments. Thank you very much. One thing, and I don't know if you can do this, a request if we can put the captions on.
Okay,
so
let me see if I can
to enable that. Captions. People have probably seen me screwing my eyes up, and I was just trying to see if I could do it from my end. But Charmaine has the master.
I don't know. My apologies. I don't think I can from this setting. I have to go into the back end of the webinar. And last time I did that messed a lot of things up. So I can't, I'm so sorry, I can't do that from here, but you will get the recording and I'm happy to do a transcript of the recording as well, which means within a couple of days, you'll get the Word version of the transcript. So I'm hoping that will help. My apologies for that.
No worries at all. Anyway, I just thought that I'd make that ask. So, you know, do you have a sort of, you know, ballpark figure of how much people should be looking to raise for you know, is there such a thing as a standard book or a, you know, what's the amounts that people work with?
I see a lot of authors kind of go out the gate that, oh, I'll be happy with 2,500 or 5,000. And I think that's too low. I actually think if you, one of the things I've really enjoyed about our discussions, Victoria, is you can't keep going out with a crowdfund. Let's like, oh, I have more bills to pay. I will go out with another crowdfund, because you exhaust your audience and your community and you actually lose credibility for your project. So I always like to look at, I think crowdfunds for books that are, I've seen a lot of them be very successful very quickly at the $7,500 mark. I've got some colleagues who have done that. I've seen it at 10,000. I've seen it at 12,500. And those are kind of the ballparks that I see a lot of authors look at. Now, that being said, if you are doing something like a spectacular kind of a release, for example, not only producing and releasing the book, but maybe you're taking the book on the road with some kind of a tour. That's what we did with with our children's books, actually. Then if you were to do something like that with crowdfund, you could actually increase the amount that you were going out to request and secure through your crowdfunding efforts.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I know we'll get to this later, but, you know, I always say, you know, what's the bare minimum you need to be effective? And then what's your sort of stretch goal? Because there's a lot of gamification in this. And if you can hit your base goal, you're at 100% and you go into overfunded, then, you know, success breeds success. So, you know, as I say, a lot of gaming behind that. But I probably should take about 20 steps back and actually define what crowdfunding is. I don't know.
Then we'll all be on the same page. This is new for some folks. Some folks have not supported crowdfunds before or consider doing one for themselves. So I'd love for you to start there, Victoria. So we're all working from the same information base.
Yeah, and some people think it's like a very new thing, but actually, you know, it's something that started actually in the 17th century in Holland. It was also used to fund the plinth for the Statue of Liberty. So it's the raising of funds from lots of small amounts from your crowd. So it's lots of little bits of money all coming together to raise a larger amount of money for a specific objective. So in the case of the plinth of the Statue of Liberty, it was a local newspaper, New York newspaper, put an advert in requesting everyone to put a little bit of money in. They got enough money together to put the plinth in, and you know, they all put a small amount in, but it was enough to build the plinth, and that's where the Statue of Liberty lives now. So nowadays we have online platforms to facilitate the process, plus we have social media to share it, emails, newsletters, and lots of ways to promote the campaigns. And you know, one of the things that we'll see, you know, today is you can't just say back me. Nobody's interested in that.
Yeah.
It's got to be content rich. It's got to have a real why behind it. But you know, in reality, you know, I'm sure everybody on this call is probably far better than even me at doing that. So, but we'll talk about that later.
Well, and you know, Victoria, a lot of people, a lot of authors, aspiring authors I talk to, they say, oh, you mean Kickstarting or Indiegogo? And you and I know there's a lot of other platforms. So yes, there are two, but there's so many others. Can you speak to that a little bit? Because I know one of the things you teach, that, and this is really important, this is a writer downer, everyone. You really want to consider the best platform. You don't need to write it down. You taught me this, Victoria. You were telling me years ago that sometimes crowdfunds don't meet their mark simply because the entrepreneur, speaker, author, coach chose the wrong platform for what they're trying to do. So speak to that a bit.
Oh yeah, you're absolutely right. There's absolutely selection of the right platforms, and you know, you talk about Kickstarter and Indiegogo, and I actually see there's one of the people here today is launching their Kickstarter. So you know, I am definitely not going to knock that, because there are it is absolutely right for many campaigns, but they're what we call rewards crowdfunding platforms. So people back the campaign, and in return, they expect a reward. So it could be the first access for a new book, or an invite to the book launch, or the book and a follow-up one-on-one session with the author. I mean, if anybody here is a coach and, you know, wants to have a session, you know, these are sort of the rewards that you can offer. And that's what people are expecting from the rewards crowdfunding platforms.
Really important to know it. And a lot of times when you talk about rewards, we hear them called perks. And I know there was a couple of questions that came into me that we'll address later about that. So one of the things I wanted to mention too, Victoria, is I can really see how relevant crowdfunding can be for authors to get their book done, put it out into the world, do tours, generate funds to do other things like wraparound products and services. For example, maybe you've got a book and you want to turn it into a journal. So there's a lot of opportunities to promote your book, but other parts of your business as well.
Yeah, I mean, it is absolutely, you know, there's so many benefits you can get above and beyond just raising the funds that you need. Mm-hmm. So you're absolutely right. And going back to your previous point, you know, it is all about selecting the right type of crowdfunding, the right platform, and the right objectives. Those three things have to be right. So as well as rewards crowd campaigns, so that's the Kickstarter, Indiegogo, you can have a donations crowdfunding. So if, for example, your book could be very impactful for a disadvantaged group, people may donate to get your book out to the people that need it. So, you know, that could be very impactful. You could do what I would call the TOMS model. So people could donate, they could get the book, and then a copy of the book goes to somebody who would benefit from it at no charge. So, you know, that would be perhaps a donations crowdfund where you're actually donating for a cause, and it's more about feeling good. Now, if you're looking for people to invest into your business, you may look at peer-to-peer lending. You could look at royalties campaigns and that sort of thing you might hear on Dragon's Den or Shark Tank, or even equity crowdfunding. And this is when people get equity in your business in return for the investment. And they believe in your business to grow and to seek a return. Now, this involves securities. So typically common shares if you're in Canada, preferred shares if you're in the US, or it can be debt on both sides of the border. But it means it's highly regulated, and you have to use a highly regulated platform such as Equivesto or Front Funder in Canada, Republic, Seed Invest in the US. There are in the US, you have so many platforms, but just a couple to name there. I don't think we have anybody from Europe here, but I mean, you've got Seedrs and Crowdcube, but I think it's like 2 a.m. So
Well,
I'm not expecting anyone
bonus points if there is someone here from, from that
if
time zone.
Recording, they might listen to it. But yeah, we've run campaigns in Europe too. And so the process, that we'll go through today is actually consistent wherever you are in the world. So
great. So Victoria, if you were to narrow down for us, how do you actually choose the type of platform to use and the approach to use? Can you narrow that down a little bit for us? Because there's a lot of options.
Yeah, no, I mean, and I'll be honest, often we do an Excel spreadsheet, and it's like, what are the, we look at what is your objective, and then we work out where best meets it. So, are you looking to pre-sell books? Are you looking to raise capital to fund the book development? Are you looking and launch it professionally? Are you looking to promote your book with a specific target audience? Do you want to get your book sponsored to reach a specific audience? Or do you want to build a business where writing is a revenue stream? Once you've actually sort of identified your objective or objectives, then it really helps to filter out. And as I say, we have a sort of Excel spreadsheet. Got to stick with the old-fashioned ways, and we put the objectives down, and then and the potential ones. And you've got to look at things like costs and geography. As I say, some of these don't work in certain countries, so that also is a bit of a decider too.
And I know from talking to you, Victoria, you always remind me that, and I share this with our clients all the time, that crowdfunding can do more than simply raise funds for your book or your project. Tell us more about that.
I mean, absolutely. It's a really powerful tool when it's done correctly. I mean, it's not quick. It's not free. I want to just get that out on the table. But if you invest the time and a bit of money, you really will see the rewards, and those rewards, as I was saying, building your business, even the act of running a crowdfunding campaign, somebody may not back the campaign, it just might not be a right time for them, but they'll be aware of the book, and then when they go into a bookstore and they see it, they were like, oh yeah, I forgot to get it, and I would have got it for 20% cheaper, but I'm going to pay full price for it now.
Yes.
And so it's the awareness that you raise. It's making everything very shareable. So it's not just you getting your message out; it's your network getting the message out to their network. It's that network getting out to the next one. So it's creating these ambassadors, and a lot of the pre-work that goes on. One of the things that comes out of that is that you get to tell the story. So you get to tell a bit of your why. What are you actually addressing in this book? Why would people be interested in reading it? What would they get out of it? It's not about it. I hate to say it's not about you. It's about what their benefit is. And if you're doing your preparation, you have a great chance to get people really excited and tell them about it. So
that's an important part to mention, Victoria, what you just said. It's not about you, and you've got to have a great story to tell. A lot of times when I see crowdfunds done by authors, especially if they're rushed, there's no video, or if there is some kind of a video, the video is all about me and the book and how awesome this will be. And people want to hear about the person behind the cover of the book, or your big why. So, and I know, Victoria, you and I have talked about that so much. So really keep that in mind, folks. And I know we'll talk about that a little bit more. So over the years, Victoria, having been involved in so many different types of crowdfunds, you've developed a process. So I'd love for you to share some of the process. And I think this is going to start answering some of the questions I'm seeing coming up in the Q&A box as well. So share some of the process.
I've just seen we're up to 24 questions.
I know, and we are going to get to those, folks, not to worry.
So our recommendation is to start 90 days before you are going to launch your campaign. And the reason for that is we really want you to help you identify who your crowd is. So, who is likely to be interested in your publication, and get them warmed up. It was what I was just saying before, is it's a chance for you to make an emotional connection with those people, to get them really excited about the book, so that when the campaign launches, they're in there straight away backing the campaign. And research has shown that if you hit 11% of your target on day one and 33% of your target in the first 7 days, you should hit your goal. And that is a global statistic on every single type of crowdfunding campaign. And so, if you can get that excitement and through the preparation, then, you are far more likely to achieve that. And it helps. I know that there's, one of the people here today is running their Kickstarter campaign. Kickstarter, their algorithm will go, oh, they hit 11% on day one. They hit, they will actually see that, and you're more likely to get promoted, because it isn't a build it and they will come. Yeah. It is up to you to bring people to the platform. Always work on the basis that you're not going to get anyone from the platform. However, if you can get that formula right, that 11% of your target on day one, and get into that algorithm, then you might well find that you're being promoted. So if you want to blow through your goal, that's a really good way of doing it.
And I'm just going to add something that you've been talking about, those first couple of days being critical. For those of you that are authors that have done any kind of a bestseller launch, you're very well aware of how important that community is in putting your message out there, sharing your book on social media through emails, newsletters, podcasts, and all of that. And I remember my first experience with the importance of community with a book, Victoria, was when I wasn't even done on Toby's Terms. Actually, it wasn't ready for release to the world. We had the cover, the description, publisher put all that on Amazon. I went to an event and we had some pre-copies of the book, and I gave 30 copies away. And my friend Teresa DeGrova phones me that night, or the next day, sorry, and she says, "Char, you're number one." And I'm like, "Yeah, I know." And she said, no, I'm serious. Your book is, I was just thinking, this is what I've been telling, our book is going to be a bestseller. And she said, "No, it's really happening. Go on Amazon." And what had happened, there was no crowdfund. That was just simply 30 people who were reading the book on the airplane, loving the book, and sharing. Watch out for On Toby's Terms coming, whenever it was September. And it was the other people's audience. Now I'm thinking, imagine if that were a crowdfund. But that's the power of community, because one of the things that happens is we can exhaust our social media community, our friends and our family who support everything that we do, our colleagues, we can quickly exhaust them. So what you were saying, Victoria, about the importance of coming out of the gate with your crowdfund well planned, giving yourself the time to plan it correctly, and then and engaging a lot of people in advance, building that community in advance, so that when your crowdfund goes live, you've got their support. And I think I just wanted to capture that, Victoria, because that, when I met you, that was one of the things I think was immediate alignment with us, when we both kind of said, oh, I agree with that. I agree with that. And it's one of the shortcomings that a lot of authors experience. They just go too quickly, no plan. And then those 2 days that are critical don't get achieved.
Yeah. And it is a bit of a numbers game. I mean, I always think of, Pareto, that, 80-20 rule is that, 80% of your business comes from 20% of your people. And, the numbers, if you've got a very niche book, it's probably 95% of your business comes from 5% of people, or 99.1, whatever it is. But you've got to go out there to sort of kiss a lot of frogs, to find your prince or your princes who will be the ones who want to back it. So, that's part of it. And the other side to it also, and you raised a really good point there, Charmaine, which was, using up your audience, using up your network, using up your family. Yes, your aunt will buy your book because she's your aunt and, she's always loved you. But giving your aunt the tools to be able to share it with her network
Mhm.
so that it's her friends, but
Yeah.
that she can also, she's not saying, oh, you got to get this book because, you know, my niece wrote it. You're going to say, no, you're going to get this book because of X, Y, Z. This is the difference it's going to make.
Yes.
You know, that's the sort of thing which is, you know, a very different experience. I always say to all the people and companies that I've supported, I want you to be able to sit down at Christmas, Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, whatever you celebrate, and feel comfortable sitting next to everybody around that table.
Right.
So, you know, I don't want anyone
Mhm.
to feel, oh, I went into Chapters and bought all 100 copies of my niece's book just to sell it out. You know, you don't want to
Right.
put anyone in that sort of situation.
Yeah.
I'm sure nobody on this call would do that. But you want to give that why behind it. And that's where that preparation is really helpful to do so.
Yes. Well, when we think about planning, a lot of the questions that I get from authors when they're planning or even considering a crowdfund is they'll say things like, well, what are some of the things I can raise funding for? So I've seen authors, and I'd love your input on this too, Victoria. I've seen authors that have actually, give you an example, a children's author who wanted to illustrate the book. And so she looked at planning a crowdfund for the illustrations and then the classroom materials, educational resources, I think is what she called it. So coloring books and a little teacher's guide and some swag. So she came at it from that angle. Another author, he worked in the corporate environment. So he was writing kind of a how-to book for business for his clients. And he wanted to create a compendium, sort of a workbook or a journal and some laminated tip cards. His clients often wear those lanyards with the safety tag, and so he wanted to have behind the safety tag some of his tips on the topics he speaks on. So that was really innovative. But he also wanted to do a tour. He wanted to do a tour of associations, the trade association that he belongs to, and go right across Canada to all of those associations. I think there were about 20 of them across Canada. And so that's another example. And I've seen people look to raise funds to actually complete the book. So editing, cover design. I've seen people look at tours, you know, a library tour, a school tour, a tour of businesses or associations, just like that other author. So the list is really endless, I think. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah,
Or did I just dream too
absolutely.
big there?
No. I mean, you know, the thing that you need to think through is why would people back it?
Mhm.
You know, so quite often we'll break it down into bite-sized chunks, so that people can actually see, you know, for example, for the tour, you might say, you know, we want to tour, you know, all the schools across
Mhm.
across Florida, for
Right.
example. And you can say, right, to cover Miami, we need to do this, and to
Mhm.
cover, I'm trying to, my apologies if I don't know all my different places in Florida, but you know, you might sort of say, and that's how you can actually grow it. So you can
Mhm.
actually, you then breaking it down into bite-sized chunks. But you can see, one of the things I was going to say is you can see the flexibility. You can keep it completely simple, do it
Mhm.
simply as a rewards campaign. If you want to be the first one to get a copy of this and you want to get it at a great price, you know, sign up here. Keep it simple, right the way up to some of those suggestions there, which are actually quite complicated, and you need to do a
Mhm.
bit more thinking about the why to back it and etc. But that's the thing, that the flexibility comes out. So yeah, I would say any and all of those, any of all of those.
Yes.
And I'm actually going to answer a question now. Am I allowed to answer? Will
Yes,
you let me
absolutely.
know
I
if
know
I
I'm seeing the questions rise, and we're doing great for times. And keep the
yeah.
questions coming, everyone.
Yeah. So, I mean, one of the things about sort of working out, you know, how much to raise and working out those perks is, you know, as you've already heard from Charmaine, it's probably more than you think it is.
Mhm.
So, you know, we actually have a budget tool that we use, and we always put an extra 10% in because we expect potentially 10% to drop out. We always just do that just because we
Mhm.
want to make sure we have all the money there. But you know, even just, you know, looking at what's going on in the world at the moment, the price you paid last week ain't the price you're going to be paying next week.
Right.
So you need to factor things like that in. So I think, you look at that side of things. And then if you are doing a reward, say, for example, with a book, and if that book retails for $20, you might want to sort of offer it at $17.50. If you know what your margins are, that margin is what you're looking to sort of go towards the raise. So, you've got to do a bit of, what are your costs? What are the returns? And then balance it from that point of view. So then you would know, if your book's 20, you're doing it for $17.50, and you're wanting to make my maths easy, you're wanting to raise 17,500, then you might want to just have 1,000 books out there, but that you're actually only going to get about 12,000 because you've got that cost of everything in there. So does that sort of help on answering that question? And then the other side to it is, with things like a book launch, there's more of a perceived value. So if you get a private invitation to a book launch and meet the author, etc., what's the perceived value of that? So that can be a way of allowing you to raise more funds if you're going to do a book launch. If you could do it, that one's quite a geographical one, so you'd have to have people who can get to you. Unless you want to promise the flights, wouldn't recommend that. I've seen it happen. Don't go there. But if you do a virtual session, so say you're offering a virtual session afterwards, so the costs are much lower, but you can see the value of that. If your normal hourly rate as a consultant is, $250, $500 an hour, that's the value you can put towards it. So I just wanted to, and I'm sure we'll get more questions around that, but, that's how you can start looking at how much you want to raise, what you're raising the funds for, and then really getting everything aligned.
And tell us a little bit more about story, because I know there was a question about that too. So I know that you always say it's very, very important for the author who's doing the crowdfunding to be able to tell the story and to tell it in a way that engages people to get behind your crowdfund. So because you want people to share it, you want the crowd to build. It's not just about the revenue, it's also about the crowd that you're building. Can you talk a little bit more about that story piece? Because there's been a couple questions on that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. The story is key. And I'm sure everybody on this call is probably far better at storytelling than I am, but you want to make that emotional connection. You want, it's about emotional connection. It's about proof points, and it's about trust. But people, if yours is a business publication, people want to trust you that they by reading your book, they're going to have the impact that you want. If yours is more of a sort of a fiction, then people want to get to know you. How often do you really get to know an author? It's not that often. It's one of the big differences, like in equity crowdfunding with businesses. How often do you actually get to meet the CEO of a company? You don't.
Right.
And it's the same thing. This is a chance for you as an author to connect with people and create ambassadors. So when they're at their next book club, they're like, hey, well, actually, I'm getting these weekly emails from this author, and she's so interesting. He's so interesting. He told me the story of what was the motivation behind it and the why. And then, they're talking about it, and your book isn't even published yet. They're talking about it, and they're getting really excited. So, telling your story is absolutely vital, getting that emotional connection. And, you get on the cover, you get the so-and-so is so-and-so, and they've been here, and they live here, and they've got this number of children, and they've got this number of dogs. That's pleasant, but okay, that person's a dog lover. That's a good thing. But,
it's not the story.
To be able to spend, do that drip campaign, to say why, you might sort of like talk about your personal story, why you wrote the book. Then the next week you might talk about, what the impact is that you want to have the book. The next week might be, that you gave a chapter of the book to somebody and the impact it made to them. You can see sort of how by the time, that these people, as soon as you launch that campaign, it's like, I have to have this book.
But
And in fact,
exactly.
I'm going to buy 10 because I'm going to give it to all my friends for Christmas. That's sort of the where the storytelling is so important. And you guys are experts at it. So
Yes, you're coming to this whole process, authors, with a huge advantage. And something I don't have a highlighter here, but I would highlight the heck out of this, Victoria, if I did. Basically, you told us that your story is not your bio. This is really important. All the time we see videos and the story, which is just an expanded bio, like the bio that you use in the back of the book, the bio used for speaking. That's not the depth of story that Victoria is talking about. She's talking about letting people feel connected to you, telling them your why, telling them why this book is important to you, why this story matters, whose lives that you want to touch. And that, I'm really gathering from you, Victoria, is that messaging and planning are essential foundations in a successful crowdfund.
Yeah, I completely agree with you on that one. It's messaging, it's planning, it's timing. You don't want to spray and pray. It has to be a bit targeted. I mean, I know it's a numbers game, but it's, if you've got a children's book, you're not going to be, reaching out there to somebody who doesn't have children. And it's not, going back to the aunt or uncle situation again. You want to be targeted. If you, with your Toby series, that's a great book for children, but it's also got a very specific need behind it. So identifying that niche, it's really important.
Yes, this is critical. And what you just said, that specific niche, because a lot of times when you and I have had conversations with speakers, authors, coaches, entrepreneurs, and authors, and we say, who's your target audience? And we often get something like this. Well, the book is for, parents, but it's really for anyone who knows a child, who, and you can't market to anyone or everyone. And that's right.
It's that Pareto I was saying.
Right.
Is that, and especially I think in the book world, 95% of your sales will come from 5% of your target audience.
Right.
It is not, and if you are not for everyone. And the thing is, the way you're going to have the most impact is for people that it's most relevant to. And so you'll feel good because you've sold lots of books, and you'll be getting all the feedback of like, this book changed my life. I read this story and I really related to it, or, I followed your guide and it's made such an impact. That's what you want. And that will also allow you to leverage for your next book, for your next activity. Yeah. Because you're really connected with the right niche.
Well, and you just lead us into the next question I wanted to ask you, which is, I know that you and I, and many of you on the call have seen campaigns that have not only hit their target goal, they exceeded it, like significantly exceeded us. Tell us about that, Victoria, because we've seen them. I just saw one the other day when I was perusing social media, and I thought, wow, this author has knocked it out of the park within the first week, by the way.
Yeah. Got to do that first week. Actually, I will say, I have had campaigns that have been slower burners, but that's usually due to the time of year. Timing is everything. But yeah, no, hitting it out of the park. I mean, it isn't complicated crowdfunding. It's just a process you need to follow. And if you miss out steps, you really reduce your chance of success. And what you're talking about there when you hit it out of the park is success breeds success. So, I've already mentioned the fact you're likely to get picked up by the platform's algorithms. Even backers are more likely to back a campaign when they see a real traction. And that's when you see what we call overfunding, depending on which platform. Everyone calls it something slightly different, but overfunding is often a typical term. So you want to plan what your minimum is you need to do something meaningful. And then, what's the sort of like the bells and whistles, sort of like, what could you do if you raise more funds? So if you just hit it out of the park, could you do a bigger launch event? Could you add color illustrations? You're the author, Charmaine. I mean, I'm sure you have lots of other examples of things that you could do with that additional funds.
Well, I know for the third children's book that will be coming out in 2023 about our dog Toby, and this is all about kindness and bully prevention is the storyline. But one of the things that we're going to do in that crowdfund is if we exceed our goal, we're going to create an app. That's going to be one of the things. So the book will also be available in the app, and there'll be the coloring pages that the exact book will be in a coloring book format. And we're also going to, if we exceed, in that crowdfund that we do in 2023, we were also thinking about, wouldn't it be cool if we then donate books to schools that are in need of that, or classrooms that are studying or looking at bullying and kindness as part of their curriculum, or nonprofit organizations. So, that creative thinking, Victoria, came from conversations you and I have had over the years, because honestly, when I started learning about crowdfunding, I wouldn't have thought about including that and keeping the campaign going, so to speak, after the campaign ends, and then all of the other things that you can do through this process. And just to let you know, I know the questions are pouring in. We're going to go to questions in just a moment. Victoria, is there anything else you think right now is critical for our listening audience to know about things to consider when planning a crowdfund? Any other important elements right now before we go to questions?
Yeah, I've got a couple of things, but I just want to say, this is why we're a good team, because you get book publishing and the many ways to raise cash and funds. And I know about crowdfunding. So hopefully the people on this call can see how we bounce off each other. It works very well. Yeah, I think one of the things that, I want to share, we've talked about niches and, really identifying who your niche is. But the interesting thing is, your backers, you probably know a third of them already. And so part of the process is how to approach them, as I mentioned, so that you can have Christmas together and be comfortable. But, helping, you be able to reach out to them and to really activate that audience. Right. But then the next third is their connections. So a third of your backers is going to be the people that they know. So you need to give people the tools to share with their networks. And it comes back to that trust, those proof points. If they can say, hey, I work with Charmaine on this project, and she was fantastic. She really helped me, and she's got a book coming out. That is an endorsement that's second to none. So that gets that next lot of backers out. And then the final third are the people that you have shaken the trees for. So as I say, it's that targeting. It's a bit of a numbers game, but that could be things like press releases. That could be things like, as I say, emails, newsletters. So I just want people to sort of know that that's how we sort of build out. And for some people, you might actually know 100% of those people. What you're doing with the platform is you're giving a focus, you're giving credibility. You're not just saying to people, hey, I've got a book coming out next month, prepay me for it. That's a bit weird. But if you say, hey, I've got this platform and you can be the first to get my new book, that ain't so weird. It's one of those things. So I think just I hope everyone can see that it's a very clear process. There's some very clear objectives. We seem to have lost you for a second.
No, there we go.
Very clear process, very clear objectives. But it's also quite flexible around what your needs are. And, the different platforms out there. I think the only other thing I just wanted to mention, just because we did mention Kickstarter before, and if you're looking to raise that sort of, as you were saying, about 5,000 to 15,000, then a rewards crowdfunding campaign is probably your best bet.
Right.
So Kickstarter and Indiegogo, they're the duopoly. So it's not a monopoly, it's a duopoly. And it's starting to get broken. And we're seeing platforms like Crowdfunder which is a great for creative campaigns. So I could see this really fitting for a lot of clients here. What I like about Crowdfunder is they actually have a free version of their platform. Now there's still PayPal charges, there's only, certain things that are certain in life, death and PayPal charges. But the way that they have it, it does actually reduce your costs. As I said, you still need to spend a bit of money to build your crowd, but look at it as marketing your book. You'll get your backers, but you'll also, as I say, people might not back your campaign just because they choose not to, timing's not right, but then they're aware of your book when it's actually in store.
Fantastic.
Okay.
Well, should we dive into questions? Okay, getting the reading glasses on. Let's see what we've got for questions. And go ahead, Victoria, too, if you're, let's see.
Yeah.
There's some great questions. There was one that I'll answer right away that somebody asked what an evergreen book is. So I'll answer that right away. An evergreen book is a book that just keeps selling and selling and selling. So On Toby's Terms is a great example of that. It came out in 2010. It's in its second edition. I'm still selling books. In fact, I just sold 77 of them to one of our client groups. So that's an evergreen book. A book now, not some books have a sort of a lifespan, right? Because it's a topical, a book that speaks to something here and now. But a lot of books can be evergreen, self-help books, memoirs, which is what On Toby's Terms is. So I hope I answered that question. What else have we got here, Victoria?
Well, I was just going to say to Odette, because we're both in Calgary, and my arm's not long enough to pick up a Harry Potter book, but if I was to go here, I've got a bookshelf here and a bookshelf here, and the book's behind me. So, but yeah, just a shout out to Odette there.
Awesome.
Jessie, I know you were interested in hearing more about the crowdfunding process. And when I said about graphic novels, that crowdfunded platform, that seems to be their sweet spot. They seem to be doing some really good work in that. So can I just say I'm wanting to read a lot of books here because there's some really interesting
I feel like I could be doing my holiday and birthday shopping I'm going to save the questions.
Yeah.
So okay.
I was going to say Carrie. So Carrie West was asking, she has a nonprofit. What are your thoughts on making a crowdfund to a tax deduction in addition to other giveaways? So nonprofits can't, charities can. And a lot of the platforms will actually enable it for you. They'll even do your tax receipts for it. Oh. So yeah. So Fundraiser does that. So that you just put the code in and then it handles it all for you. It's wonderful. Wow. So for anybody, and they'll do that for Canadian and US. Okay. So but yeah, so I'm not sure of how to get charity status in the US. It's about a 2-year process in Canada.
Yeah, it's a long process. Yeah. Sometimes we see authors, I've certainly done this, where we've partnered with a charity on our crowdfund. So we have that charitable partner, which I've done. I now have a charity as well, but prior to that, we've partnered with other charities in many ways. And I see a lot of authors looking to that approach as well.
Yeah, I would absolutely say that. And especially when we're talking before about sort of some of those donations ones, where we've got people who are, perhaps you get a book and you give a book, because of course you need to have, if you're getting something, then there's that value there that they take into account. But if you're giving a book, you'd be able to get that tax credit back for that part. So that's what we're getting into. Details. I apologize, but I just
Victoria loves this subject, so just soak it all up, everyone. What else have we got?
Carrie was asking about 30,000. Is that doable? So I go back to what I said before about what's the minimum amount you need to raise to do something meaningful. I did this is an equity crowdfunding campaign where the client wanted 500,000. So when I say, I've done some big campaigns. We made their minimum 100,000, And so when they'd raised 234,000, they were at 234% of their target. And everyone was like,
Wow.
wow, they're so successful. And the money poured in. They ended up raising 600,000, but it was a
Wow.
psychological game because people saw that and saw the success. At the
Mhm.
same time, I had a campaign looking to raise $1 million, and they were at 337,000. So they were over 100,000 more, but they only showed 33% of their target or 34% of their target. And so everyone's like, oh, they're not doing very well. Well, they'd raised
Wow.
100,000 more, but
Yes.
psychologically it didn't look so good. So, you know, that's why, Carrie, if you can put that minimum that you can do something meaningful with, and
Mhm.
then have that stretch goal, you know, it's the old eating an elephant as well. You know, you can't eat an
Mhm.
elephant in one sitting. You break it down into bite-sized chunks.
Right.
And even if you look purely at the donation side, I always cite Oxfam, the charity,
Mm.
and they used to have lots and lots of children starving in their pictures. And when they moved it to one child starving, their donations went up because
Really?
people felt that they could make a bigger impact because they could see the relationship. So, you know, I'm going to give a very specific example. If you want your book to go to a specific audience, we talk about, you know, a school, for example, you know, a school. So for your example, your Toby book, you know, if you wanted to get it to a school, you could say, if you donate, you know, $1,000, we will be able to, you know, get this book to 10 schools. But if you donate 100 books, $100, you could get it to one school. And that makes it, people can relate to that. They're seeing an exchange and they know they can make a difference. So on the donation side, that's the way we tend to play it. Anyway, Carrie, I hope that answers your question. So yes, 30,000, yes, it's doable, but I just break it down into that elephant-sized chunks.
Right. Okay, great questions. Let's see what else we've got. Pam, thank you for your comments. Pam says she's got a series of spy novels out and some nonfiction ready to launch. And she said she's used some of the strategies around sponsorship and have seen authors using Kickstarter. So thank you for that. What else do we have here?
I've got one. Can you crowdfund for a book that's already gone to market? So, yes, I mean, what I would be looking for is what's that hook? What's that little different thing? You know, are you offering an extension to it? Are you offering an updated version? Are you offering the one-on-one session? Are you offering something different?
The workbook or the other products?
Yeah. Or the other option is, are you offering it at a better price? You know, so, which you may not necessarily want to do, but you're missing out, you know, some of your publishing middlemen. So, you know, if you may be able to do something around that. So yes, you can crowdfund for a book that's already gone to market. Just need to be a bit creative.
Yeah, great. Let's see what else we've got here.
How much money do you need to have to be able to afford the campaign?
Oh, so good question.
Yeah. The rule of thumb we tend to use is 10% of what you want to raise in marketing. So if you want to raise $10,000, $1,000 in marketing, but if you think of what you'd be spending on marketing your book anyway, you know, that's, you know, you probably be spending more than 1,000, and you're going to get 10,000 out of it. So, you know, you're going to get those additional funds, but that's, you know, your rule of thumb.
Yes. Okay. What else have we got here? Okay. Gone to market. We answered that one.
Could you speak more about the best times of year to launch crowdfunding campaigns?
Okay. Ooh, that's a good question.
Yeah, really good one. So think about what your book is all about. You know, who are you trying to sell to? If you think this is going to be, as I said, the Christmas gift for everybody, do a bit of a work back schedule. Christmas, 25th of December, last day to post is going to be this date. So I need the campaign to close here. You know, 30 days to 45 days to run a campaign, 90 days preparation. Yeah, probably should be starting now. So, you know, I always find the peaks just generally.
Mhm.
Next week is going to be hell for me because I
Mhm.
have so many campaigns on overdrive. But September, once kids have gone back to school and things settle down, really busy time for
Mhm.
crowdfunding. September, October, November. I don't like starting campaigns after mid-November because people then start getting into Christmas mode. And as I've already said, if you can't get that book to them in time for Christmas, then,
Right.
you know, yeah, it's not worth it. I
Mhm.
think this year we're probably going to be partying harder for Christmas than normal.
Mhm.
So I think people are quite screened out.
Mhm.
So I think I probably wouldn't want to have a campaign going much beyond the end of December. So
Okay.
which would mean I wouldn't want to start a campaign after about the 1st of November.
Mhm. Okay.
So that's just where I'm sitting. Now, the
Good.
interesting thing is January is dead because everyone thinks they've spent too much over Christmas and they think they're broke and they won't spend on anything. So they
Mhm.
won't back anything. Then as soon as that first credit card bill comes through and they realize, actually, I didn't spend quite as much as I thought I had, we start to see the purse strings open up.
Mhm.
So, you know, it means that December and January is quite a good time to plan so
Yep.
that then you could look to run a campaign. So starting in sort of, you know, February, March time, February,
Yep.
March, April, May, June,
Mhm.
fabulous months.
Yeah.
And then July, again, this year has really shown it. People have switched off July, August. They've had enough of screen times. So, you know, I would not be in market July, August, unless there's, you know, if it was like your book was about the summer solstice,
Mm.
you might want to have it over the summer solstice.
Yeah.
But apart from that, you know, I wouldn't do July, August, and I wouldn't do December, January.
Mhm.
So
Brilliant. And for those of you, I'm just going to mention that we're almost at the top of the hour here. So if there are folks on here that need to ring off, you'll be able to catch up. We're going to keep going for another 10 minutes with questions. I do want to mention that Victoria and I are actually joining forces to put together a small group. And by small, I mean about 8 authors who are looking to crowdfund, and we're actually going to work with you to help you create your strategy, create the community, so you actually go out of the gate with a community. And for those of you that are wishing to dive deeper into learning how to crowdfund your book and have a community built in by the nature of participating in the group, we're going to be doing a follow-up call to answer questions about that and to share information. So you'll get information about that in the recording emails that come out following tonight. We hope you'll join us for that because it's a great thing to start a crowdfund with a built-in community. Now, there were a couple of other questions that came up. There was a question about sponsorship. What does it mean to get sponsorship?
Give that one to you.
Okay, let me take. So the question was, what does it mean to get sponsors for a book? I've never heard of this before. How does this work? How does the sponsor benefit? It can look so many different ways. This is one of
You are the world champion at this.
Thank you. Everything I do in my books, in my business, in my speaking, everything I do has elements of collaboration and sponsorship in it. So when we did our book tour called A Million Acts of Kindness Tour. It was 7 weeks right across North America, sponsored Winnebago, 32-foot Winnebago, sponsored wrap, sponsored technology. We had brands and sponsors who got behind this tour to help us take our mission of kindness on the road. And this was all about my speaking and the books, but really to inspire more kindness in the world. And so everything related to the tour, our travel, our team's hotels, all of our printing, not the books, but printing of marketing materials, the banners, all of that was supported by sponsorship. And then the other piece of that was we had sponsors. So we had purchased quite a lot of books. I think it was about 1,500 or 2,000 books. And those were sponsored. We had sponsors and Rotary clubs and Seroptimus clubs who bought the books in bulk and sponsored them for us to give away to schools, organizations, at book signings where people would buy a book and we give them one free to donate to somebody in the community that they thought needed the message. So we did all kinds of innovative things with sponsors. We've also had clients who have had sponsors contribute to the production of the book, where they actually sponsor part of the cost of the books, and in exchange, they are recognized in the book in some way. We're doing something similar to that with one of the how-to books that I'm producing for the workplaces, Working Better Together, which will come out in early 2023. So there's a lot of different ways that sponsorship can happen. The challenge is a lot of people, entrepreneurs, authors, speakers, coaches, get a great idea, and then they jump out the gate and they start calling sponsors again without a strategy, without a plan, without building the relationship, and then it generally won't work. So if you're going to look at sponsorship, and you can actually combine sponsorship and a crowdfund, which is super juicy, whole other topic. Victoria and I will talk about that on our call for the people who are looking to do crowdfunds for their book. But there are ways to actually blend sponsorship into your crowdfund. The second part of that question that came up about sponsorship was, what's in it for the sponsor? What does the sponsor get? I love answering this question very simply. I don't know. It depends on what's important to the sponsor. So you could say things like, for a gold sponsor, you will get this, this, and this. And for a silver sponsor, you will get this, this, and this. Sponsors want, brands and businesses want a customized way to work with you. So when I say I don't know what sponsors want to get out of it, it's that every sponsor is different. The sponsor who sponsored our motorhome for the book and speaking tour had very different objectives than the service clubs that were buying books for schools. They had different objectives from the telecommunications company that came on as a sponsor. Every brand will have different goals and objectives. And when you build that relationship, you can determine what they are to then figure out what is the best way for them to get behind your book, your launch, your tour. So I hope that kind of answers that. If not, pop another question in the Q&A box. Have we got other questions coming in, Victoria?
No, people are asking how they can sign up.
Okay. I'm in. Awesome. Honestly, this is the way to do this. And Victoria and I are putting this together because we've noticed that when you can take crowdfunding, so Victoria brings that genius, and I'm going to say the marketing genius as well. That was her background before crowdfunding. And then, of course, I bring this author and sponsorship element to it. And having worked with tons of authors around North America over the years. And so what we're going to do is start with an information call, and we'll send that. Victoria and I are just putting the information together. Our vision is that we're going to have an information call to share with you how we see this working. But just the short version of it will be that there's going to be a series of calls, and those calls will be combined of content. So you're getting the content, you're in a group. A small group, 8 people is what we're looking at per cohort. And that 8 people are going to learn the content together and work on their strategy. You're going to get feedback from each other. That is so rich, by the way. A lot of authors do it on their own, and getting help, inspiration, contacts, ideas from other people is so important. And of course, then you're going to be able to tap into this community of people that are in your cohort and their audience. So we see this being a series of calls. You're going to plan your crowdfund. You've got the support of Victoria and I, and then you're going to be set up for success. And then at some point, when your crowdfund is planned in, ready to go, you're going to launch your crowdfund. And we believe you're going to have tremendous success. If you follow the process that Victoria has and you give it the time it needs, you should have some great success.
And a lot of fun on the way.
Yeah, fun. Here's my quote. Tell me if you like this one. I made this up in 2022. If it's not fun, doesn't get done.
I like that.
Right? For those of us who are, I know for me as an entrepreneur, if it's not fun, it's bolted to the bottom of my to-do list pretty quickly. So we've got to have fun. It's
a bit like, what's that, Marie Kondo? You know, you hold it up, and if it doesn't give you joy, you throw it away.
Yeah, so. Yes. Yes. And I hope that, I really hope that as you're listening to the replay, go back and listen to the replay when we send this to you, because this will actually get you started to be thinking about what is the best timing for my crowdfund? What is my why? Who is my audience? All of these questions that Victoria said are critical. And it's exactly what she does when she works with clients. She's coached me on crowdfund. So you've got to start at the beginning. And a lot of times as entrepreneurs and authors, we want to start in the middle and get to the end quicker. But with a crowdfund, you've really got to start at the beginning for it to generate the success that it has the possibility to generate.
I agree. Yeah. And thank you very much for all the lovely, kind words that are coming through. Really appreciate it. You can see me typing thank yous to everybody. But I'm hoping we've answered what everyone was hoping to get out of today. And as I say, my apologies about the captions. I think that was the only thing we weren't able to do.
Yeah.
But we will certainly get this through to you, so you'll be able to do that.
Yes, perfect. Well, I am delighted that you all joined us. Again, I'm Charmaine Hammond with Raise a Dream. My business partner tonight, Victoria Bennett with the Crowdfunding Hub, and we're really excited to share this content with you and very, very excited to see what you create with your book. So thank you for joining us tonight.
Thank you very much. And, I know you spent your evening with us, but we hope to see a number of you next week for a bit of a deeper dive.
We'll send that information out. Have a great night. If you do have more questions, folks, please put them in either the LinkedIn page where you came from or email us. We'll be happy to include those questions in the next conversation that we have so that you can get your questions answered. Have an amazing night. And thank you for putting your book out into the world, whether you are still writing it, it's in your head or your heart, or it's out there. I am a firm believer that our world becomes a better place when people get their story out there to the masses.
I agree. Thank you.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.